if you have some hunger that's not being met, you're never going to be able to realize consciousness. Like, all right. Is the only thing standing between us and consciousness hunger? I love this one. Well,
That's so
because
interesting.
because we talk about consciousness a lot on the show, and Adam and I talk about it a lot behind the scenes. And so, um, when I read this, and I'll give the quote here from, now I'm thinking totally, but I'll give the quote from Maslow. It was the quote from Totally. Uh, Now, when I was reading this quote, I was just like, oh my gosh, that's so perfect. So, what he said in this paper was consciousness is almost completely preempted by hunger. And I'm like, oh my God,
Mm.
that's so true. But I mean, I just loved it. And of course, he was talking about physical hunger. And he was going back to someone who's chronically hungry. It's like when you're chronically hungry, all you can do is think about food. And so you're not conscious of what's going on around you. You're not conscious of your other feelings other than hunger. You're not conscious of what the needs of the people around you are. You're not conscious of wanting to be loved or any of that. All you can think of is food. And so that's what he was talking about, is that, you know, and basically saying if you weren't meeting your physiological needs, you weren't going to be able to reach any level of consciousness. And that makes a lot of sense. But
Mm.
I think it could apply to any kind of hunger. So it doesn't, I would think it doesn't have, and that kind of feeds into, we didn't plan this, but that kind of piggybacks on what you were just talking about. It's like if you have some hunger that's not being met, you're never going to be able to realize consciousness. Like if you have a
Mm.
hunger for money, you have a hunger for prestige, you have a hunger for power, or whatever that hunger is, you're never going to satiate it fully unless you become conscious. And it's going to be so hard to become conscious as long as you're chasing whatever you're chasing.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And oh, and I wrote down here that as long as we're hungering for something, we can never feel like we are all that we can be, which is what
Mm.
Maslow would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I love Maslow. He's so interesting.
I know he's awesome, but so what are your thoughts on consciousness there?
Well, I had to ask the question though, like,
Yeah,
it don't we break the cycle of hungering for something by being conscious?
yeah, right.
Because I even thought about with hunger, right? So I read this diet book, which hasn't worked yet. Maybe I'm not ready for it. Like, I don't know. I'm hungering for food too much. But in this book, right, talking specifically about hunger, I don't think you or I or anyone around us really in this privileged society, I don't think we've ever really experienced
No,
true hunger.
I have not.
Um,
No.
but but we've certainly experienced the fear of experiencing hunger, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
and that's what he says in this book. He's like, you know, you should experience hunger. He's like, it's good for us to experience hunger. And it's this idea of what causes us, say, to overeat is
mhm,
because we constantly like, oh no, I don't want to be hungry, so I just keep eating, eating, eating. And he's like, whereas if you kind of step back and like make a conscious decision, am I like actually hungry or am I just fearing that
yeah,
I'll be hungry, you know?
right.
And so that's the thing. I think it's even with physical hunger, I think we need to be conscious. I'm certainly no poster boy for that because, you know,
Yeah,
you know, as soon as I go to the supermarket, I'm like, what snacks can I buy today? 'Cause, you know, so it's like an unconscious decision. Maybe it's to do with the, you know, I could say the way the supermarket's laid out makes me want to eat snacks
true.
more.
But yeah, it does. Yeah.
But yeah, so that was something that I wanted to ask you, and I think you covered it before, but like, I don't know, it's tricky. I'm like, so he's saying that you need to meet your physiological needs before you move into consciousness, but then I'm like, I almost feel like you need to be conscious so as not to be a slave to those
For sure.
physiological needs,
Well,
maybe?
he was talking about extreme, like he's
Yeah.
talking about extreme hunger, or
Okay.
in this case, or say like an extreme lack of resources of some. Well, that would be safety, I guess. So
Yeah.
yeah, hunger would probably be, or like shelter, well, shelter, safety, water, lack of water, bad air. Like if you were
Mm.
somewhere that was really polluted, like I don't know, toxic,
Yeah.
live near a toxic place. So he's talking about a very extreme case, and I can see in that case that you're not going to become conscious until that need is met. I mean,
No, that's very true.
but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
no, so that's what he was talking about. But then I started thinking of it in a different way. And I think you're right that like the kind of hungers we're talking about, like even if it's a physical hunger that we would have, or whether it's a hunger for success or hunger even just for love or whatever you're hungering for, it is kind of a double-edged sword almost, because, or a catch 22 almost, because you can't come out of that without becoming conscious, but it is hard to become conscious when you're in it because you're so focused on that one thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like,
Uh,
no, how do you break that? And I guess unfortunately, I think most of the time, at least this is what happened for me, and I think the only way you break that is you have to hit some sort of wall. You had to have some kind of upset in your life that makes you reevaluate where things are. 'Cause I
mm,
don't know that you come out of that without some major life, some major shift in your life
I agree.
that was
Yeah.
put on you, like a shift you didn't choose, like
Yes.
something that you just all of a sudden had to deal with. I don't think that you come out of that cycle of hunger otherwise.
I think you're right. I'm pretty sure I had the same thought. And I mean, we've kind of talked about that. It's like, yeah, like someone having a marriage breakdown.
Yeah,
Like that's a good. You don't expect it, and then your life kind of is thrown into this upheaval, and it is. You kind of almost have to go through some life altering event, whatever it could be, and it does break you out of that cycle because there'd be so many people, who have say like a near death experience or
sure. Yeah,
or maybe they get like a terminal illness or something, and that's when they come out of that cycle.
yeah,
But I guess it's like, yeah, you almost want to try and kickstart, and I think that's why there's a lot of like people out there in society trying to teach this, but it's kind of been lost along the way because of the whole money thing again. But
yeah.
people trying to teach you to wake up without having one of these big life altering
Yeah.
events, because
And I just don't know if it's possible. I really don't.
yeah,
It's got to be possible. I mean, anything's possible, but it's so easy to just, and I guess that's a safety thing, is it's so easy to just stay in the pattern that you're in.
yeah.
And there's such a pull to do that, like an inner pull, not Interpol, but a pull inside of you that makes you just want to stay in that place.
Yeah.
But gosh, until you're really forced to re-examine it, I don't know. Unless I think there are some people. Well, here's the other thing that we've talked about before too, is like we've talked about kind of reincarnation and coming back, and like
Mm.
I remember we were talking about like, well, maybe every time you go through this world, you get a little better every time, and you become a little more enlightened every time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe there's some people that come in more enlightened because they've
Yeah.
already been through this cycle so many times.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But other than
I'm with
that,
you. I'm with you on that. I cannot see unless, yeah, you are one of those people who've maybe had 5 past lives,
yeah, and so you've
and you
already
have come in as like a spiritual guru. I don't know how, without a life altering event, that you will break that cycle
right.
because there is a lot. That's the whole reason why Eckhart Tolle wrote that book, because he's like, we need a spiritual awakening. He's like, the planet is just full of people who are not conscious. But, as he said, the more people that become conscious, the easier it is for the collective to become conscious.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I just think there are so many people that are slaves to, just being part of that cycle of hunger. They can't break out of it. So
yep.
it's interesting. Oh, I love this topic. It's
I
it's
know.
interesting.
It is. And I guess that possibly could be like say you went to see Tolle speak.
Yeah.
It just really moved you. Maybe that could be a life-changing event, but I almost feel like you'd have to already be open to it somehow though. Because it'd
Well,
be
that's what he
really
says, isn't it?
off to
Even
it.
by reading his book, he's like, some people read this book and change, others will read it and think it's a load of nonsense.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Or
Yep.
even if they believe it, it's still, you get done reading it and you still just continue doing what you were doing before.
Yeah.
Do. That's what people
We've
do.
all done that. We've all
We've
been
all
to a
done
lecture
that.
or
Yes, we all
something.
do that. So
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know about you. Like, I can remember many times, like, going and watching someone speak or watching a YouTube video
yeah,
back in the day, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing thing. But within a couple of days, a couple
yeah,
of weeks, I'd forget about it, and I wouldn't
right.
practice what they were telling you.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
you weren't,
Yep.
yeah, you weren't hungry enough, I guess, for
I wasn't
you
hungry
weren't
enough.
hungry enough for change. There you go.
Yeah, yeah,
You have to
exactly right. Yeah.
stop hungering for whatever you're hungering for and start hungering for change. There you go.
Yeah. I like it. That's the title of this video.
Hunger
Yep.
for change. All right, next question.